If you are ready to go deep and unlock the full power and potential of astrology to shape change in your own life and the world around you, stay with me. My name is Alina, and I am the astrologer for creatives and change makers with a physics BS from Yale. Today, we're talking about Jupiter, the planet of abundance, fortune, and luck. I am giving you everything you need to know about the planet Jupiter in astrology. We're going to start out with the general significations, what Jupiter means. We'll get into the mythology, astronomy, the exaltation, domicile, dignity, and debility within the zodiac. We'll get into how to interpret Jupiter in a birth chart and also look at Jupiter's stations. So if you'd like to skip to any one of those different topics, you can also check out the timestamps below. This video is a part of a series I'm doing, so if you want to learn about any of the other planets, you can check out this whole playlist, this planetary playlist, to go deep into each of the planetary symbols in astrology and how to work with them, relate to them, unlock their full potential within your own life and the world around you. So to get into the overall meaning of Jupiter, Jupiter, like I said, is abundance, good fortune, good luck, joy, optimism, faith, expansion, big picture thinking. I really think about Jupiter as like Santa Claus energy or Oprah energy, like you get a car and you get a car. Everyone's wishes are granted, kind of like the genie almost in the zodiac. Jupiter is also associated with faith, justice, God. There's a little bit of a righteousness to Jupiter and an ethos, like a moral imperative here. Philosophy and knowledge are also associated with Jupiter. Authority, heads of holy places, freedom, sometimes wealth, although money is sort of more Venus, but like the abundance of wealth can also be Jupiter. Grandeur, your sense of reaching for more. Also generosity, philanthropy, donations, those are all sort of Jupiter topics as well. Kind of giving away freely. A little bit the opposite of Saturn in that sense, where Saturn is sort of like stinginess and like holding on to things, and Jupiter is just giving away without attachment. We can also think of Jupiter as broadening our understanding of these kind of big picture things. And in ancient times, Jupiter was also associated with children, as sort of back in the day, children were more associated with wealth in a sense, where you would have children to be able to help you around the farm, and children were very much like put to work and a part of building the abundance and the wealth of the family. And so sometimes there's also a fertility association with Jupiter as well, or the abundance of children. Jupiter is considered to be the greater of the two benefics. We have Venus as one of the two benefics and Jupiter as the other, and Jupiter is said to be the greater of the two. So Jupiter is literally astronomically like a bigger planet and also further away than Venus from the sun, so it has a longer orbit, slower orbit, so it has kind of just a bigger, more powerful feel to it, but also it will depend whether or not you're born during the day or at night. Traditionally, they would say that if you were born at night, then Venus would be the benefic of sect, the more positive of the two benefics that want to do good, lovely things for you in your chart. And if you're born during the day, then Jupiter would be the one to be the greater of the two and be the area of your greatest gifts and joys in the chart. There's also two malefics in astrology, Mars and Saturn, so you can also check out those. There's sort of two planets that want to do very good, lovely things, and two that want to do more difficult, challenging things. Saturn and Mars, the two malefics, Jupiter and Venus, the two benefics. Venus is the feminine benefic, so Venus has more to do with love, romance, harmony, sensuality, these kind of earthly pleasure things, wealth like I mentioned. Also could be friendship, art, music, harmony, peace, relaxation, all of these types of things. Whereas Jupiter is the masculine benefic and has more to do with these kind of heady, less grounded things like faith, God, optimism, joy, expansion, philosophy, philanthropy, all of these less material things. Like, it can be material abundance and wealth, but it is also some of these more heady things like justice and kind of like ethos and morals and God, religion, authority, things like that. So in both very ancient Babylonian times and in less ancient but still very ancient Greek times, Jupiter was associated with, in the Babylonian era, Marduk, and the Greek era, Zeus. But in both of these mythologies, Jupiter, archetypally Marduk or Zeus, came to fight for the team of the new gods who were waging war against the old gods. And with the help of Jupiter, Zeus, Marduk, the newer gods were able to take over. And Zeus, Marduk, Jupiter was only willing to do this in exchange for becoming king of the gods. So that is sort of the ancient archetypal realm of what Jupiter signifies. Zeus is also known as the leader of the gods, the protector of justice and law, guardian of the state, god of wisdom, and was also known to control the fates of humans. And Zeus is, of course, also sort of god of storms, known with his lightning bolt and thrusting that around. And Marduk in Babylonian times was also associated with ordering the cosmos and organizing the universe, and also the guardian of justice and law as well. As far as Jupiter's astronomy goes, it's so fascinating the way that, of course, in ancient times people were not able to see the planets up close or know much about what was really going on there. They didn't even know they were planets. They thought they were stars, wandering stars. But now that we have all of these fancy telescopes and technology and science, we are finding that there is so much that makes sense with Jupiter's astronomy that matches his astrology. So Jupiter is, of course, the biggest planet in the solar system, fifth from the sun, a gas giant. The mass of Jupiter alone is 2.5 times the mass of all the other planets in the solar system. Huge for the planet of expansion, growth, and big picture thinking. It makes sense that he happens to be the biggest. Also very bright in the night sky. If you look out, you should go watch the stars sometime. You'll notice Jupiter is quite bright. And of course, astrology is deriving symbolism for what these planets mean through our visual experience of them. So the way that they look to us literally from our eyes is how we are coming up with meaning and symbolism for them. So it's very significant to note some of these more literal features of Jupiter. It's interesting that one of the famous things about Jupiter's astronomy is that there's this big red dot on Jupiter, which is this storm that's been happening nonstop for centuries, which is just fascinating to think of Jupiter as also the god Zeus in the Greek pantheon, god of storms with his lightning bolt, and that it is actually has this very stormy nature to it, which is kind of funny. I always kind of felt like Zeus was funny as a representation of Jupiter because Zeus is kind of like punishing, not really known for being like a great guy that you want to be around, which is not at all what Jupiter signifies. Jupiter is like joy, optimism, faith, and all of the good, abundant things. But for whatever reason, there is kind of both of those things that are a part of Jupiter, literally and figuratively. It's also funny that Jupiter has no solid surface. It is a gas giant, which is making me think of this connection between Jupiter being the more masculine of the two benefics, where the feminine qualities are associated with being more earthly, material, sensual, grounded, practical. Water and earth are both elements that are associated with being feminine. All of the feminine signs in the zodiac are either water or earth signs, whereas masculine signs are the air and fire signs. So a gaseous planet is literally just kind of like air and heat without that earth material stuff of the feminine elements. So it's interesting that Jupiter also literally is just gas, which, you know, archetypally in this framework is sort of more masculine. Another thing about the stormy nature of Jupiter is that it has the fastest rotation of any of the planets, even though it is enormous, 2.5 times the size of any of the other planets. It's going in its full rotation in only 10 hours. So that's crazy fast. And it's so big that because it's spinning so fast and is so big, it actually looks like a little bit smushed, like it's a little bit oblong, because the spin is so fast. It's creating this kind of like disc type of nature that flattens it out just a little bit. And this is also why, if you've seen pictures of Jupiter, there's all these kind of bands of storms that go around the planet. And that's related to how fast the rotation is, which is, again, just fascinating to think about Zeus and the storm god and the way, oh my goodness, the atmosphere is moving in Jupiter. Wow. And then this whole thing with Zeus also having lots of kids. This is part of the reason that fertility in children are also associated with Jupiter. Zeus has so many kids, dozens of kids. And fascinatingly, Jupiter, literally astronomically, has like tons of moons. It has like over 90 moons. And actually, one of the moons of Jupiter is one of the biggest moons, is one of the places in the solar system that we are thinking is the most likely possibility to find life, which is fascinating. Also with this connection with children, new life. On this moon called Europa, there is an icy surface and then a saltwater ocean underneath of the icy surface. So this is why scientists are thinking, maybe there could be some life here. So Jupiter, children, abundance, this kind of like optimism, faith, as just makes a lot of sense to me too, that he would be the planet that actually has a child that is like, you know, if you think of the moons as like the children of the planets, because they can literally be like chunks of the planet that kind of like didn't congregate and form into the planet itself, but just kind of kept in rotation. So it could be like literally a chunk of the planet that came off from like an asteroid or something, or it could be like when the cosmic dust was coagulating into these solid planets, there were chunks that kind of like stayed along the outside. So I think symbolically it makes sense to kind of think of the moons as like the children of the planet. And so one of Zeus's children in this literal astronomical sense could be a place where we might find life outside of Earth, which is like so cool. So to get into the Zodiac a little bit, back to kind of this more ancient mythology of things, I'm going to pull up a Zodiac wheel over here that I made. This is also a graphic that's available for download on my website if you want for free. It's got tons of super fascinating symbolic information in here that will take you a very long time to understand deeply and completely. This is an excellent symbol to work with as you're learning astrology, to just really inoculate your brain, your subconscious with the imagery, the geometry, the archetypal networks of everything in this Zodiac wheel. So highly recommend you give that a download. So we have here the outer circle naming each of the zodiac signs. These are where the constellations were initially. And then we have inside of there the glyph and then the symbol for each of the signs. This is Pisces, the glyph ruled by Jupiter and the two fish. And then inside of there, we have the symbol for the planetary ruler. Each of the signs is ruled by a planet, which essentially means that that zodiac sign is a manifestation of that planet. Each planet has one or two zodiac signs that it rules, which is sort of also to say that it's the home place of that planet. In ancient times, people understood the sky to be like its own world, and the zodiac was like the kingdom, and the different signs are like the different countries or regions or kingdoms in the sky world. And then the planets are like the wandering characters that traverse around the sky world. And each of them is king or queen of one of these kingdoms, which is to say that zodiac sign is very similar to the planet itself, that the sign is an embodiment of that planet. The planet is like the more abstract, like slightly more archetypal nature of the thing, and then the zodiac sign is like one version, one iteration of that more essential archetypal planet. And so as the planets wander around the sky world, they could find themselves in places that are very supportive to their nature. For instance, if they're in their home sign, or they could find themselves in places that are quite opposite to their nature and antithetical to what they would like to be doing. So here in this graphic, we have the planet pictured on this third to the inner wheel that rules each sign. So we are looking at Jupiter today. So Jupiter over here, here's the glyph for Jupiter, I have it labeled in English here, rules Sagittarius and also Pisces. And so within these wheels, inside of the planetary name, I also have the quadruplicity, whether or not that sign is cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Cardinal is the beginning of a season, fixed is the middle of a season, and then mutable is the end of the season as it's changing. And then within there, we have whether or not it is masculine or feminine on this innermost circle here. So Pisces is the mutable water, feminine version of Jupiter. And then Sagittarius is the mutable fire, masculine version of Jupiter. These are the two places of Jupiter's domicile, Jupiter's home, where Jupiter is king in his kingdom. And Sagittarius as the fire, masculine version of Jupiter. Sagittarius is sort of like the archetype of the evangelicalist or the gypsy. So mutable fire. Fire has this passion, this drive, this energy. And with it being Jupiter, this is a drive, energy, and passion towards justice, joy, expansion, optimism. So Sagittarius really likes to get around. They love to travel, go on trips. They also are often the life of the party, tend to be super fun to be around, and really just wild people oftentimes. And as a fire Jupiter sign, they tend to be really connected to some kind of, it could be philosophical ideal, political ideal, spiritual or religious ideal. They tend to have kind of a strong faith or passion towards something like that, and they tend to really like to tell people about it and spread the gospel of whatever that thing is for them. Versus Pisces, the mutable water version of Jupiter, the two fish. So water is not so concerned with the world outside and materializing things outside of them. Water is more mystical, healing, emotional, empathetic, merging type of quality. So Pisces is the archetype of the mystic. They say Jesus was a Pisces, for instance. Water also is associated with creativity, and Pisces tends to also be quite artistic. So Pisces is also very much connected to these ideals of what is just and sort of right and what would be best for humanity, this kind of compassionate felt sense of the suffering of the world. Pisces is very empathetic, and they can really, especially as a mutable water sign where they're able to change and adapt so easily emotionally to the people around them, and also as the two fish, the ocean, this like deep well that Pisces is, they can also be very connected to even the collective and collective feelings and the collective unconscious. So they're just swimming in this water, where Sagittarius has this drive towards action and kind of like being out in the world and telling people and like creating potentially things related to what their ideals are, or at least talking about it with people. Pisces is easily kind of overwhelmed by the felt sense of it all and the suffering of the world, and they're very connected to their dream world and inner imagery and artistic nature oftentimes, or like spiritual kind of gnosis type of practices. It can be easy for Pisces to be a little bit overwhelmed by the feelings and the sense of the justice that does not exist and the suffering of the world. Pisces can sometimes tend to be a little bit more depressed sometimes. That can be a risk that Pisces runs as they're swimming in this deep water that they are. And the way that Pisces tends to bring this vision, these ideals to life, tends to be more in the artistic realm, maybe through music or art or something, that they're bringing alive a vision that they're connected to that is the realization of this Jupiterian type of ideal, but it's more in an imaginal realm, which is also very important to have those ideals to be connected to. And it can be a little bit less natural for Pisces to be really on the ground making it happen in real life in a practical kind of tangible way. So that kind of takes us into the opposites that we see in the zodiac wheel. So each of the signs is opposite to something else. So we can see Pisces here is opposite to Virgo. So they are opposite because they have opposite nature, and also their planetary rulers have opposite nature. So Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and then Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And you'll notice that the Sagittarius-Gemini axis is also with Jupiter opposing Mercury here as well. So the opposite sign here, Virgo, is very good at the real world, very good at the details, the practical things, making things fit together and work and make sense and get things done. Virgo is the maiden. It's Mercury, mutable earth Mercury. So Mercury is our planet of the details, analytical thinking, communication, just kind of how things work, and technology, and also math, astronomy, astrology. All of these things are mercurial as well. Business, commerce, craftiness, putting things together with your hands, things like that. So Mercury is much more kind of mental and thinking about what is logical. So the Mercury-Jupiter axis can also be kind of thought of as like logos versus ethos, like what makes sense versus what is just or right or something like that, where Jupiter has this strong conviction towards these ideals, these philosophical, religious ideals, and is also like big picture and expansion. And then Mercury is more of like detail-oriented little things, and also, you know, maybe you're telling me that this is the right way to think, but I'm going to just investigate both sides, and I can see that there's probably validity to the opposite to what you're saying as well. And I'm gonna go with what makes sense over my emotional passion, conviction for whatever this ethos is. That's kind of the tension between Jupiter and Mercury. So the feminine axis here, so signs that are opposite to each other also share the same gender. So this is the feminine axis of Jupiter, Mercury, with Pisces and Virgo here. So in this feminine axis, Virgo being the earth Mercury tends to be, as the maiden, also very helpful. Let me make sure that you have like your health taken care of, and that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and everything is clean, and we've really thought this through. We understand all the steps, we're planned out, we know what's happening, and I can also help you if you need, and I have my little herbs that I can take, and maybe you might like some of these herbs as well to help you out. This is kind of the Virgo energy. Also really good at editing, really good at detail-oriented things, finding the errors and pointing them out and fixing them. This is Virgo superpower. So this is things that will be quite difficult for a Pisces person. Pisces is more, again, of this like Gnostic merging with the collective, cosmic, dreamy ideals, and Virgo is like, okay, but what do we need to get done? And that's never going to be what Pisces is the first inclined to do or think about. Virgo can be a little bit of an overthinker even. They can even verge on a little bit of neurotic sometimes, needing things in a particular way, thinking a lot. And Pisces is more of an over-feeler, potentially. Like they might be a little bit overwhelmed, lost, consumed, submerged in the feeling realm. So when Jupiter is in Virgo, that is called being in his detriment, which is just the place that is the opposite to what Jupiter wants to do. So when Jupiter finds himself in Virgo, it's just as Jupiter wanting to bring this kind of big picture thinking, broad philosophical ideals. That's not really what Virgo wants to do. Virgo wants to get grounded and get into the details and make things happen. So when Jupiter is in Virgo, that can just be like a little bit quirky for those people who were born with that, or it's a little bit less of a strong place for Jupiter to be. And similarly, when Jupiter is in Gemini, this is also his detriment. So Gemini over here, opposite to Sagittarius in the masculine axis of Jupiter, Mercury. So the Gemini Sagittarius axis is more kind of this fire Sagittarius versus air Mercury reason. So whereas the Pisces Virgo axis is kind of like feeling versus thinking, dreaming versus what is practical, Sagittarius is more like passion for the ideal, and then Gemini is kind of questioning in its essential nature. So another function of Jupiter is to confirm, whereas Mercury, the opposite, his function is to question. So whereas Jupiter, especially with Sagittarius, is saying, this is the gospel, this is what is right, this is what we need to do, this is the direction we need to move in, Gemini is more, as a function in this mercurial sense, going to want to ask questions like, okay, that seems good, but what about this? And what about that? And did you consider this? Gemini really just likes to think for thinking's sake. It's like very fun for them to just think about different ideas. And it's not even that they necessarily believe in the ideas that they want to think about or talk about. They just think that it's fun and worthwhile to consider lots of things. Whereas Sagittarius and this Jupiter sense might even be sort of like very put off by that, to say, oh, it's like wrong for you to even consider that. Like, you shouldn't even think about that. This is the way. And Gemini will say, I know that you feel that way and that you have a lot of passion for that, but I'm not going to make my decisions based off of my passion. I'm going to consider what is reasonable and rational and look at both sides of things. Gemini can also be very light and social and playful, and they don't necessarily need to go too deep into things. They're happy to just have fun and like skid along the surface of what is ideas and mental, social, playful things, whereas Sagittarius has much more conviction. It's like, there is a reason, there's a bigger picture, we're a part of something, we're manifesting something, we're realizing something, life matters. And Gemini's not necessarily, like mad at that, but they just want to have fun, It doesn't all have to mean something per se. You can just think for thinking's sake and play for playing's sake, So when Jupiter finds himself in Gemini, this is again just a weaker place for Jupiter because it's a little bit of the opposite of what Jupiter wants to do. So if you have natally Jupiter in Gemini, it's just a little bit of a weaker position and might make your kind of big picture thinking skills a little bit more difficult. Maybe you tend to zoom in on the details more, or maybe your sense of justice is a little bit more rational than like a passion or something like that. But if you have Jupiter in detriment, it is not the end of the world. There's lots of other things that we can consider to look at to see what else might be supporting or not supporting Jupiter. It's rare that a planet is just in the worst possible case scenario. So there's lots of other ways that even if you have a planet in a challenging place, like in its detriment, there could be other supportive factors bolstering that planet. And it is just the story of your life. And that can be, unique and different and quirky compared to other people in certain ways, certain times, if you have planets in challenging places. And then it's said that Jupiter's exaltation is in Cancer, so that is a very nice place for Jupiter to be as well. Cancer over here, whereas Jupiter's fall is in Capricorn, opposite to Cancer. So It makes sense that Jupiter's fall would be in Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is sort of the punishing, disciplining planet. This is a planet of restriction, constriction, depravity, having less, scarcity, whereas Jupiter is abundance. So it makes sense that it would be a very difficult place for Jupiter to be in Capricorn. And therefore, the place opposite to Capricorn would be much more supportive. Cancer. Cancer, the mother, which wants to nurture and caretake and support. And these are things that Jupiter also wants to do. So that is why it is the exaltation place of Jupiter. We can also look at the planetary joy scheme. So Jupiter has his joy in the 11th house, the house of good spirit. In ancient astrology was what it was known as. So this is the place of friends, groups, alliances, hopes, and dreams. It's across from the 5th house, which is the place of good fortune. And this is the place where Venus has her joy. So these are some of the best houses, and that's where some of the best planets are the happiest. So just as if Jupiter was in Sagittarius or Cancer or Pisces in its domicile or exaltation, that would be a supportive place for Jupiter to be. It would also be a quite supportive place for Jupiter to be in the 11th house, where he has his joy. As this is the place of kind of making dreams come true, where you get together with your group of people and you realize the dream, you work towards the ideal, and you have a merry good time. This is what Jupiter wants to do, and that's what this type of house topic is related to. So that is how Jupiter has his joy in the 11th. As far as interpreting Jupiter in a birth chart, like I mentioned initially, we have Jupiter being the strongest benefic during the day and for day charts. So if you were born during the day, then you can look to the house placement that Jupiter is in to see where your greatest gifts are. For instance, if you had Jupiter in the 2nd house, this is the place of personal finance. So maybe you might have had better luck and fortune with regard to personal finance matters. Or if you have Jupiter in the 5th house of creativity, then maybe your artistic and creative endeavors are particularly important or successful, or something you have natural talents or gifts for. And you can look at the house placement and see what that is for you in your chart. But it's often the case for people that you may not initially recognize that you have good fortune in the area of life that Jupiter is pointing towards in your chart, because it's easy for us to take for granted the things that come naturally to us. And this can also be true for Saturn placements or Mars, depending like where the malefics are. We can also normalize the things that are hard for us. Like we can look at where Saturn is in your chart to look at where you might have experienced the most difficulty in your life, especially if you have a night chart. And oftentimes people, when they're told this information and look into it, they're like, oh, isn't that true for everyone? Like, I guess, but it's like everybody has problems with that. And it's like, no, not everybody does. And similarly with Jupiter, you might think, I mean, I guess it's like, okay, or like, I don't know, really. But if you really kind of broaden your perspective and consider the great diversity of lives that exist on planet Earth, then you might find that maybe things were slightly easier for you in this area of life than they could be for other people. And it will, of course, depend again, like for instance, if Jupiter is in his fall or detriment and then also being afflicted by Mars and Saturn at the same time during a night chart where Jupiter's not as strong as he would be anyway, then, you know, maybe you won't feel that as much. But generally, that's the way that we look at Jupiter in a birth chart and start to interpret it. You can also look at these traditional planets as different psychological functions, but Jupiter and Saturn are a little bit less so like this than some of the other planets, because Jupiter and Saturn are the furthest away of the traditional planets. So like Sun is the ego, Moon is the subconscious, Mercury is your communication style, Venus is your style of love, harmony, beauty, romance, aesthetics, things like that. So Jupiter then in the psychological framing would be your big picture thinking, but this I find to be a little bit difficult to really wrap your head around. But that's sort of the psychological framing. So the zodiac sign that Jupiter is in would be kind of like the style of big picture thinking that you have. So for instance, if you had Jupiter in Capricorn, Capricorn is very much like about planning and structure and discipline and making sure that you don't suffer through scarcity, that you're prepared, that you're building something that will last and is meaningful. So maybe as you're doing your big picture thinking and conceptualizing the world, maybe you have a little bit more of this kind of like practical, grounded, even kind of scarcity fear mindset sometimes around how we conceptualize the big picture, just as an example. But I'm not actually going to go through each of the Jupiter signs and try to delineate what they would indicate, but that's sort of the way that you can start thinking about how to interpret Jupiter in a birth chart from a psychological standpoint. More often though, I think astrologers tend to look at Jupiter in the birth chart as things that come from outside of you, as Jupiter is like good fortune, good luck, abundance. So often these are things that don't actually have to do with who you are as a person, but just where external fortune is granting you abundance or luck. And if you were born at night, then Venus would be the stronger of the two benefics. So the greatest areas of gifts and blessings would be the house placement where Venus is located. But even if you were born at night, Jupiter will still probably indicate an area that you experience good fortune in, but maybe just like not quite as much as the place where Venus is. And this is again more of the traditional understanding breakdown of things with the sect day and night charts. And then lastly, to get into transits, when Jupiter is moving through the sky in real time through your chart. So there's where Jupiter was when you were born. This is the natal placement of Jupiter for you. But then after you're born, that moment, time continues and Jupiter keeps moving around through the zodiac. So it takes about a year for Jupiter to go through each sign, and Jupiter will station once or twice each sign that he moves through. And this is when Jupiter is either turning around to go backwards in the sky or turning around to go forwards in the sky from our perspective. It's not literally doing this in its orbit, but that's the way it looks to us here on Earth. And this tends to just be like an exclamation point on whatever is happening. So especially if Jupiter is going retrograde or stationing direct, either way, on a natal planet or near a natal planet in your birth chart, this will be just an extra big boost of Jupiter energy towards that thing. And the first time we see a planet go retrograde in a sign after it ingresses there can also indicate to us what the general meaning of that entire transit will be like. It's just kind of like a preview, some foreshadowing for what that transit will be about the first time Jupiter stations there. And generally when Jupiter is traveling through a house, a zodiac sign, a whole sign house, that will indicate better fortune, blessings, luck within that area of life. So we love Jupiter transits. We love to see what's happening with Jupiter. So you could look right now, see what sign is Jupiter in right now, and then look at what sign is that correlated to in a whole sign house system, to which house in your birth chart. And then we can say, okay, so how long is Jupiter here for? From, well, at the time of this video, Jupiter is in Cancer from, I think, June 2025 to like maybe June 2026, something like that. So during this time, we can see, okay, so what house is Cancer for you in your chart? Maybe Cancer is the 7th house of relationships and marriage. So maybe this is a time where you have particular luck or harmony or fortune with regard to your spouse, or maybe finding a relationship or deepening your relationship or learning how to be in relationship better. It can just indicate good things happening in that area of life for the amount of time that Jupiter is there for. And when Jupiter is stationing, that'll just give an extra oomph to whatever it is, especially if there's a planet right there in your chart for you. And that is what I have for you for Jupiter today. If there's something that didn't make sense or you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments. And if you are resonating with my understanding of astrology, know that I offer consultations. So I do 60 or 90 minutes where we can get into the birth chart as a symbol of who you are, and also some timing things if you go for a 90-minute consultation where we can talk about your future, the year ahead, when you might experience career peaks and things like that. Both of these readings come with a long write-up, 10 to 15 pages breakdown, plus a recording of our session that you can refer back to. And then if you have any specific questions or things you're going through that you want to talk about, we can zoom in on specific things as well. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about any of that, and if I might be a good fit for you and can help you with what you are looking for. Reach out to me, let me know what you're thinking about, and we can talk. Thank you so much for being here with me. Be well.